What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you've done your language grind for the day. If not, I'll grind you. Okay, so we're going to look at this video right here. The truth about speaking early, Refold's official stance. Now, apparently your boy Evildea here caused a little bit of a ruckus because he made a review of Refold, and then they have now made a video in which they respond to the criticisms, I believe, of that video. I don't know, because this was linked in my Discord. I have not yet watched it. So I am curious to see if that's what it's about, because it implies it's about my main criticism in that video, which was speaking. Now, I do want to say, in that video, I was reviewing a video, not an entire methodology, because I was looking at what they were presenting in this video. Most people don't go through and explore an entire methodology. They explore one video and go, okay, that's what it means. So I broke down that particular video, but let's see what they got to say.
Another question from Reflector.
Reflector, you're out here causing chaos, I see.
And they asked us if we've seen a Refold review from Evildea.
I'm sorry, I just immediately started thinking about like an evil drug enforcement agency. Like, isn't the drug enforcement agency evil enough? What's an evil version of it? We take your drugs and force you to eat them all at once or something. Sorry, that just kind of caught me off like guard there.
I don't know how to say that name.
The confusion and trying to figure out my name is awesome.
Somebody told me about it, okay. I think. And they said it was, but it was like almost a long video. So I was like, can you just give it the TLDR? I don't want to.
That is true. I talk for a long goddamn time. You know, the reason I talk so much is because my wife talks a lot and I never get a word in. So I'm here on YouTube getting my words in. Okay, let's just watch the video.
I don't watch this. They're like, yeah.
Wait. You haven't watched it? How are you going to do a review of what I've got to say? That makes no sense. You know what? That hurts. That truly hurts. You could have just skipped through it or even lied. Like, you haven't even watched it? God.
They agreed on most things except for putting off speaking.
Yeah, it's true. I did agree with most things in that video that I did a review, but it was of that video. And
it seemed like they interpreted it, but based on what somebody else told me, about more like,
hey, why are we doing this? You know, based on what someone else is telling me, just pull up what I say, put it up on the screen, and then cut me down. Like right there. Use my words against me.
The militant, you cannot speak, sort of.
See, that's not even what I said in the video. In the video, I was literally looking at your roadmap, which was in your video, and I was showing how long it's said in your roadmap before you're allowed to start speaking, and I said that was ridiculous. That's pretty much all I said. Like, I didn't say it in those specific words, but I was literally looking at your roadmap. I didn't say anything about militant not speaking.
Stance, which we don't really have. And then the follow-up question from Reflector is like, what's the harm in doing listening repeat exercise?
Okay, so it's good that they don't have like a militant stance on this, but in the video that I reviewed, they did not present this information. And the reason I review videos and not entire methodologies here, unless I'm actually engaged in trying out a methodology myself, is because when people jump on the internet and they watch a video, they don't watch all your videos, they watch one, usually the most popular one. And that was the video I think I was looking at, the most popular one. And that video basically told everyone in the world that you don't want to do speaking for like 1,000 hours or something, depending on the language.
And so I think that there's definitely still we are not clear enough about what we mean by don't speak.
That's good. Good. Now we're getting somewhere.
But the thing that we really try to say is like, you don't want to be putting your thoughts and creating new language.
Now, also, before I let them get too far down this rabbit hole, because I'm sure we're going to have some fun with this, I also have other beefs with Refold. But I didn't express them in the video because it was not relevant to the video I was reviewing. Now, my other beef with Refold is actually not specific to Refold. It's specific to like all of these supposed methodologies where, you know, you must follow our method in order to reach fluency in the best way possible. Now, this is the same thing that Dreaming Spanish do, Refold do, you know, Rosetta Stone do. All of these courses out there and all the polyglots that exist online, they all say, I have the method, or I have the way, follow me to the light. But they all miss the most fundamental question that every teacher should ask. And I specify teacher here because this is the problem. Most of these courses are built by people who don't actually have teaching experience. Now, Refold, I know, is not a course. It's a roadmap. So I better get my words right because someone will tear me apart about that. But I'm just talking in general now. This is no longer just about Refold. This is just in general. They don't ask the most fundamental, important question that every single teacher should ask. And essentially, a roadmap is a teaching system. It's teaching you how to get somewhere. The most fundamental question. So what is it? What do you want to do with the language? Because that seems like the most obvious question, yes? How can I tell you the best path forward if I don't know what you want to do? For example, if I sat here and said, well, the best path forward is, let's use Dreaming Spanish. If the best path forward is you got to go watch Dreaming Spanish, watch thousands of hours, and then they turn around, they're like, yeah, but I don't care. I just want to read books. Well, obviously, I'm giving you a bad methodology here because that's not what you want to achieve. So the most important thing that should be asked or presented in every single one of these courses, and it never is what do you want to achieve with the language? Now, you might be thinking, well, you know, everyone wants the same thing. They just want to be fluent eventually, right? Yeah, that is true. Everyone wants down the track somewhere to reach some form of fluency in some way or another. However, the path we take is going to take years. So we should take a path that is most efficient for what we want to do with the language. Now, for example, I'm going to give you a couple of cases where I've taught, okay, because I taught English for a very, very long time professionally. And I also taught Esperanto for many, many years and like literally every single weekend. So I know that students come into these things with very, very different needs. Now, for example, I taught one student for 8 hours a day, every day for a year. The specific need here was basically to turn them into a native. So when I met this student, the student was like 8 years old. Basically, the dad said, I want this kid, my son, to be basically like you, be able to speak like you. So straight away, from day one, do you think I'm just going to say, okay, great, watch Disney Plus for like 2,000 hours? No, of course not, because he can watch as much Disney Plus as he wants elsewhere. I am here to talk with him from day one and help him improve over and over through error correction, etc., etc. And by the end of the year, he basically sounded like me, which was so crazy. It was like this little Chinese kid that sounded literally like me. But objective basically reached. Now, the second student, out of many, many of my students, was another one, okay? So, for example, this guy, he needed to be able to present in English. He needed to be able to talk in English, a monologue, like present a good monologue that was understandable. He was able to communicate somewhat in writing and stuff, and he was using online tools, but he worked at a strata company, and once a month he needed to present at their strata meeting. Not once a month, once every, I think, 3 months or so. Anyway, he needed to be able to present everything he's worked on. So this guy needed to be able to monologue well. So I taught him different methodologies in order to prove his English, to focus on specifically those areas and the words that he would be covering off in those areas and basically the language there. Everything else he eventually wanted to work on, but that was not his priority, okay? Now I've had other students who were focused towards, specific exams and goals. So they needed to be able to make sure that their language skills went along that path. Now you might be thinking, well, this is not really what Refold is trying to achieve. Exactly. Refold is for a specific type of student. That student is someone who has no immediate need for the language, okay? No immediate need. They want to be able to sit back, enjoy the language in a non-frustrated way, and then in time, when they feel they're ready, they can start talking. Funnily enough, that is not the vast majority of people who want to learn a language. So then what is my belief system? Because you're probably sitting there and going, yeah, well, there's so many different ones. What do you recommend, Evildea? I don't recommend any specific methodology. I have my preferences for me and my specific languages I'm learning. But on this channel, I like to present all the different methods that are out there, critique them, and even try them out. That's why I'm doing a Dreaming Spanish challenge right now, in order to find the best method for a specific scenario. Because when I have students come to me and ask me, I don't want to just say, yeah, follow method A, for no matter what the situation, because that's not applicable to every situation. Now, if you have no immediate need for the language, you just want to sit back, enjoy content and wait, and then someday down the road when you feel confident, you're ready to start doing sentence mining, great. Refold will work for you. No issue, okay? If you don't even care about that and you're willing to wait longer, you can just do Dreaming Spanish from what I've seen so far, because I am in the middle of a test for that one. But there is lots of different methods out there. Pimsleur is great for those who just want to start speaking right away. They need to be able to get some words out, maybe to impress someone in a business meeting or something.
me, because it can be very psychologically difficult and painful and annoying and difficult.
So here we go. He's listing out all the reasons we don't want to start speaking on day one because it's psychologically painful and difficult, blah, blah, blah. Learning a language is difficult and painful. But if you're prepared to wait a long time, yeah, you can offset a lot of that pain and you can make it less painful down the road, which is what Refold tries to achieve by delaying all of this. Like, that is very evident from what I've looked at on their roadmap. But is that applicable to every person out there? No.
And it's not very effective. But like,
I think there's,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's two different issues and two different confusions going on. First is, what is the definition of speaking? And this person asked, what's the harm in listening and repeat exercise? Like, absolutely nothing. Go do them. Like, we don't consider that speaking.
Exactly.
Okay, so he's making the distinction between speaking and then, listen and repeat. I make this distinction sometimes. And yes, there can be harm in it. Like, again, if you have not learned the pronunciation correctly, then you could be doing, listen and repeat exercises wrong. You want evidence of people who do listen and repeat exercises wrong? Just look at the hyperpolyglot takedown video I did. That's basically what he did. A listen and repeat exercise, started speaking, and then he didn't sound like any of the languages he was actually speaking. So even in this instance, there's always possible harm from every method that you take.
When we talk about speaking, we're only talking about the ideation to words. And so in terms of what we are concerned about and why we delay these things, the first is your ear adapted to the language so that you can hear what...
So basically it's the same as dreaming Spanish. They want it to be to the point where you can hear the language and understand your own mistakes.
You're making mistakes. And are you phrasing things the way that a native would phrase them, or are you phrasing things the way that you would phrase them in your native language, then translated?
Again, good for the type of student that they are going for, the person who has time. Here's an example of someone who does not have time. Myself. So when I started learning Chinese, I had an immediate functional need for this language. My in-laws moved into my house and they did not speak English. I needed to communicate from day one. It did not matter if my grammar was broken, if I did not sound like a native, as long as they understood what I was saying and I could understand what they were saying, that was good enough. Now, I can come back and fix all my broken grammar and all this stuff later on, and I have. I'm actually now at a conversational point where, lots of people comment about how I sound. My tones are really good and stuff like that because, well, I've had to use this language every single day. And when I speak with these people, if I make a mistake, I see it immediately in their face because they're like, huh? Like they don't understand, and then I know where I have problems. So for me, I have a very different need, and therefore I have to take a very different path forward. And again, it comes down to you as the learner, therefore the student. You need to make a decision about what you need this language for.
And so the ear aspect, that gets addressed relatively early in our model because we recommend reading and listening together. We do recommend sound study, listening and repeat exercises, chorusing. Those are all done well before you start speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in their roadmap, and I mentioned that in the video. I didn't have any issues with that.
The phrasing things the way that a native would.
Okay, what I'm going to do moving forward now, just because I don't want to repeat myself, is I'm going to focus on now just that specific student who has time, who just wants to sit down, enjoy the content, and then eventually start speaking. They have no immediate functional need for this language. Otherwise, I'll just be repeating myself.
Is something that takes a lot longer because you have to see an enormous amount of the language to see the way that natives speak, and you need to engage with native content, not learner content, not comprehensible input. You need to see and hear how does a native express this idea, because it is often not what you would see in a textbook. It is not what you would immediately translate. Like there's one yesterday.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Like, if you want to focus on improving like your actual speech patterns and stuff, you should be like looking at real actual sentences. So for example, watching a TV show, but try focus on like, real life stuff and sentence mind that.
That I saw where a girl was talking about her older sister, and she was describing like the age gap, and the way she described it was nos llevamos 9 años, and that is a completely different way to express that idea than in English.
Okay, so their biggest fear right now is that you're going to fossilize bad practices. Now, fossilization is a real thing. Like, you will establish bad practices. However, you can also change things. And it doesn't matter what age you are. As long as you practice at that thing, you can change it. Now, I understand the fear here is that, oh yeah, but it's harder to change. It's better to just get it right from the beginning. But this is basically a perfectionist mentality. You can go towards perfectionism if you're happy to follow that route. And this is why I feel like a lot of people are happy to follow Refold and Dreaming Spanish and stuff, is because it's a perfectionist mentality. I want to make sure I understand everything before I dare to open my mouth.
In English, you would say she's 9 years older than me. But in Spanish, the direct translation is, we carry together 9 years.
And again, even after listening to thousands of hours of content, you're going to make these types of mistakes. An example is this, okay? So in English, up until the age of 25, I pronounced Italian as Italian. Now, you might be thinking, oh, okay, that's weird. Was that like a local accent thing or something? No. Just for some random reason, I always just mispronounce that word wrong. Maybe people tried to correct me. I never heard those corrections. I'd seen thousands of movies at this point. I don't know. I must have seen like pretty much every movie you could imagine about ancient Rome as well at this point. So I've definitely heard this word probably millions of times up until the age of 25. And yet I still pronounce it as Italian as opposed to Italian. Now, I actually finally noticed one day when I was at a Subway and I asked for the Italian herbs and cheese bread when my colleague turned to me and said, "What hell retarded word is that?" And then he explained to me, and then after that I kind of realized that I'd been mixing up this word my entire life. And in fact, in my previous video, I kept calling Duolingo, or however people pronounce it, as Duolingo, just due to the fact that my Esperanto influence has affected my English. So what I'm trying to get at with like this little random monologue right now is that you're always going to make mistakes. Hell, you'll make them even in your native language. Making mistakes is okay, as long as you're able to communicate, and eventually you can always fix these things anyway. It's not like one day it's cemented and boom, that's game over. The only time I would say that you really should focus on these things is right at the beginning, making sure you get your pronunciation right, because you can fix it, but it's very hard. Like, it's a lot harder than fixing like broken grammar or anything like that. And evidence to the fact that you can fix it is if you go to the oldest video on my channel where I'm speaking Esperanto, I sound like an American. And then if you go to my newest Esperanto videos, I actually sound like an Esperanto speaker. Like, I don't sound like an English speaker anymore. And people have commented, wow, your accent has changed, your pronunciation, everything. Yeah, because like when I learned, I did not have like lots of audio tapes and stuff to listen to. So I just messed up. I butchered the sounds of the language and I learned from bad accents around me, but I eventually fixed it. So although people have this fear, you can fix these things at the end of the day. Don't stress too much. The best thing is just to be able to use the language, at least if that's your goal. If that's not your goal, sit back and enjoy your content.
Yeah, you really can't directly translate it.
Yeah, and so like there's no way that you would know that learning from a textbook or trying to speak early on. The only way you know that is if you've engaged with the language enough to hear that.
And he's correct about that. You need to engage with the language to find out all these weird differences that you just didn't expect.
There are tens of thousands of those things.
And he's correct about that.
Yeah, my example that I learned a couple of months ago was a friend was talking about their cats. She's like, yeah, tengo tres gatos. And then the other person was like, oh, ¿y todos son gatos? And I was like, the fuck kind of question is that? It's like, of course they're all cats. But then she's like, no, dos son gatos y una gata. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I just...
Okay, so basically, in summary, I can already see what's happened here. This is just, they want to be perfect before they open their mouths. And again, I've got no issue with this as long as that's what you want.
And like, it was super natural for them. It's like, that's how you ask basically that in Spanish. And I was just like, oh, of course. But I was like, yeah. Why do you... No, one's a dog. But it's just like, oh yeah, there's these things that you just have to kind of be exposed to and understand. This is the way that it is said, rather than like, this is what it means, or how do you say this? It's like, this is how it is said.
Okay, so here's the thing, and why people have this fear, and why you shouldn't. They'll see some foreigner who's been living in their country for 20 years, speaking, let's say, English every single day, and yet their grammar is broken, pronunciation bad, etc., and they think, I don't want to accidentally fossilize that type of, broken language in my foreign language, because then I'm going to act like that foreigner. and I'll never improve. The difference between you and that foreigner is the foreigner got to a stage where he's happy with his language skills and he stopped trying to improve. Because in order to improve, you have to actively work at it. You have to focus on, your grammar, focus on your sentences, mind the correct types of sentences, repeat these exercises over and over and over. It will not just automatically happen. Now, I know some people are going to say, yeah, but if you just wait for 1,000 hours, maybe even 2,000 hours, then you're going to be perfect. But that's not true. Like, if that was true, we wouldn't need school systems in which we actually, undergo training in our own language. Now, I know, again, this leads down that route of people saying, oh, that's just imperialistic language use, blah, 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 trying to stamp out accents. No, it's not that. Okay, we undergo training in our own languages in order to become more sophisticated in our own languages. So when someone talks and speaks in a very sophisticated way, they've been trained to do that. They've probably written thousands of essays and stuff like that. If you want to reach that type of level in your foreign language, you're going to have to do the same type of stuff. You basically need to go through the school system again, but you can obviously do it in a more efficient way.
And that just takes a lot of exposure, right? You're not going to come across people asking such or saying such specific things without a whole heck of a lot of time.
This is why the best speakers of foreign languages that you see and you want to be like these are the guys you look up to and you're like, oh my God, these people have been speaking their language for a very, very long time. And also they have been actively working at it for a very, very long time. You look at any of those guys out there where they speak like really good. If you look into their history, spend 5 minutes, you'll notice that these guys have been at it for years and they've been at it actively for years.
In the language.
And then I'd say there's a third reason, actually, why we delay speaking, and that's just because speaking is hard. And in the early phases, trying to take your, native ideas and native words and convert them into the target language.
He's not wrong. Speaking is hard. It takes mental effort. But here's the interesting thing about learning. If it's harder and it mentally drains on you, it's working your muscle. And then you will improve. Pretty much every study out there has shown that if you have to actively engage your brain and try to do these things, you improve faster. And this is not just a language thing. This is like across all different things. There's a reason why people in stressful environments generally learn more than people who just sit back, relax, chilling in the chair. Now, again, if you're happy to chill and you just want to do that, then do it.
It's incredibly mentally intensive. And
you feel so dumb.
and you feel so dumb.
Well, you are dumb. Like, not dumb in the sense of like you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing. You're dumb in the sense as you've only got a very small section of this language actually in your head. You're akin to a child, or maybe not even a child yet, a toddler.
Because the things that are popping into your head, like the experience of this is, if you're a new learner trying to speak English, and you're an English native speaker, English pops into your head, and then you have to convert it to Spanish or whatever target language you're.
That shouldn't be happening, okay? I'm not sure if this is what he's saying with Refold, but in general, when you're learning a language, it should not be coming into your head as English and then going into whatever your target language is. It should just literally be popping up as your target language. If it's coming first as English, then you've probably made a mistake in your learning methodology.
Whereas speaking after you can understand the language is the language will pop into your head, and it may not be right. And you may have to manipulate it, but at least it's coming out in the language.
There is very easy ways to deal with this specific problem here. I actually talk about this with the grind video, how to deal with this specific problem that he's getting at right now.
Mm-hmm. And that reduces the mental load of speaking so much and makes it so much more enjoyable. And because you're at a level where you can understand very easily and at with a low level of energy, you don't have to divide your attention. Or rather, you can focus all of your attention on speaking because understanding is so easy.
That's exactly what I mentioned with like crosstalk.
And this is why also you need to figure out what you want to do, because you should be putting your attention where you need it.
Where it's like when you go to have a conversation in the target language, you have to do two things. You have to understand and you have to speak. And if you are trying to do both at the same time, that is way harder than doing one like with crosstalk.
That is true. It is harder to do two at once, but also that helps reinforce both. because you need to target all of these things from different ways at once. The best way to cement any knowledge, including language, is basically to hit it from as many angles as possible. So if you're listening, you're just hitting it from one angle. Now, obviously, if you vary up your content, you're slightly changing it. But if you hit it from like listening, talking, writing, all of these things at once, reading, you're basically cementing more pathways to this knowledge in your head. I call it knowledge, but I know language is not knowledge, but I'm just trying to give you a visualization here.
First, you practice the understanding part, the receptive side of conversations. Then you jump into the productive side of conversations of speaking. You can't really do it the other way around because that would be really weird.
Well, you can do it the other way around. Lots of people have done it the other way around. Being really weird, I don't know if that's true, but we'll just leave it at that.
And so that's why crosstalk is just so powerful for learning to have conversations with people.
A good example of people actually doing it the other way around are those fake polyglots who will spurt out a bunch of phrases in the language and not know what the other person's saying.
Yeah, because as you get better at any of these skills, the energy requirement and the attention and focus required diminishes and reduces. And so if you dedicate 100% of your attention to understanding first, so that it reduces the energy load of that activity, then when you start to speak, you can dedicate 90% of your time and attention to speaking rather than a 50-50 split.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay, so basically overall, I actually don't have too many issues with their methodology. However, it is for a certain type of student, and you need to understand that and make that choice yourself. The one thing that does piss me off is stuff like this. Refold, the best way to learn a new language. Now, I know this is marketing and this is what people do with marketing. They always be like hyperbolic, but it is not the best way to learn a language unless that is the way you want to learn a language. Okay, that is pretty much it. And one last thing I want to say, because I have had a comment about this before. People say, oh, why should I listen to Evildea? Because, he only speaks, 2 and a bit languages. Don't just listen to me. Okay, I am not trying to be an authority figure on this. I am more of an experimenter, an explorer, a commentator. That's what I like to do on this channel. I like to look into things, give you guys my feedback based on my experience, but I am not like the most ultimate, polyglot, hyper polyglot, whatever in the world, and I don't pretend to be and I don't want to be. My goal is just to get good at the very few languages that I need and play around with the others that I enjoy and present you guys with fun and interesting information. So if there's someone else out there who's saying something that you like better than me, go listen to them. That's pretty much all there is to it. That's it. And in my community, we don't have a specific methodology. So if you join my Discord, it's not like by joining, you must follow what I do. No. I've got my way of I like to do things for specific languages. If you join, it's you do what you want to do. We are here to support you in just learning your language through whatever method you want to take and help you connect with others who are also interested. We are basically the type of community where there is no dogmatic approach. Okay, well, I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, I will give you a heart attack just like I did with poor Elmo here.